Own the Road with Kelly and Bob, the USA 250 Tour, brought to you by Mueller. Coming up on this episode...
Baseball is America. Baseball is in so many ways. If you want to know the history of America, you got to learn baseball. It's something that, my grandparents played and my grandchildren will play. And I think it's always going to be America's pastime.
We, the people of the United States of America.
And thanks for joining us for this edition of On the Road with Kelly and Bob, the USA 250 Tour. I'm Kelly Phillips.
And I'm Bob Phillips. A little known fact that only those who are closest to me realize is that most of my favorite movies have to do with baseball. Angels in the Outfield, For Love of the Game, my all-time favorite, The Natural. They go on and on. Even comedy baseball movies, Major League, both 1 and 2. But it was the movie Field of Dreams that sums up why I and a lot of other people are so fond of baseball.
Why Field of Dreams?
Because of the speech made by the incredible actor James Earl Jones when he was explaining to Ray, played by Kevin Costner, the importance of baseball. The one constant through all the years, Ray, has been baseball. America has rolled by like an army of steamrollers. It's been erased like a blackboard, rebuilt and erased again. But baseball has marked the time. This field, this game is a part of our past, and it reminds us that all that was once good could be again. And I will admit here and now that I have never watched that scene without tearing up.
He's telling the truth here. So that brings us to our story this week. It has a lot to do with, of course, baseball in a place called Louisville, Kentucky.
My name is PJ Shelley. I'm the Education and Programming Manager here for Louisville Slugger Museum Factory. I've been here since 2009. So prior to coming here, I worked for the Baseball Hall of Fame up in Cooperstown, New York. Grew up in New Jersey, right outside of New York City, and it was 8 miles from my house in Teaneck, New Jersey to Yankee Stadium. I would literally take my 10-speed bike to Yankee Stadium as a teenager and go watch Don Mattingly and all my heroes, Dave Winfield and Rickey Henderson and all these greats. Obviously, baseball's always been a big part of my life.
The famous Yankees catcher Yogi Berra said a lot of things, most of them humorous, but what he said about the importance of baseball rings true in the ears of P.J. Shelley.
Yogi Berra said, "Love is the most important thing, but baseball's pretty good too."
Baseball it's America's pastime, right? And it's such a fun sport. There's no other sport that has such great and rich history, and it just connects generations, whether it's you're watching it with a parent or a grandparent. I'm a father now, and now I've got a teenager, and he's now learning the history of the sport, and really neat for me to teach him about my heroes like Don Mattingly and Dave Winfield, and then my dad, his grandfather, teaching him about Mickey Mantle and Whitey Ford and all his heroes that he grew up with. So it's really neat to be able to have those generations connected, just as, my father taught me.
The Louisville Slugger. It's a name that is almost synonymous with the game itself.
And while players have used different makes and models over the history of baseball, it's the Louisville Slugger that really stands out both to players and to fans.
We take a lot of pride in the fact that 80% of the hitters in the Baseball Hall of Fame have used the Louisville Slugger bats. So it's really neat. So we talk about the game's greatest, like Babe Ruth and Usual and Jackie Robinson and Hank Aaron, all the greatest players of all time, Ken Griffey Jr., right up to today's stars like Ronald Acuna and Cody Bellinger. These guys have all been under contract. They've used our bats exclusively. It's really neat to see Will Smith in 2025 hit the game-winning home run with a D200 Louisville Slugger was made in our factory a week before that.
In the movie The Natural, Robert Redford made his own bat.
Yes.
Can that actually be done in the big leagues?
So these days there's lawyers.
Really?
So yeah.
They always mess things
I
up, don't
know,
they?
Yeah. So you do have to be licensed by Major League Baseball and have insurance and things like that. So you can go up there with Wonder Boy. And a fun little connection too. We've actually made Wonder Boy. It wasn't made by Robert Redford, of course, but
You just burst my bubble.
I know we made all the bats for that movie, as well as Field of Dreams and a lot of your other favorites as well.
Take a tour of the Louisville Slugger Factory and Museum here in Louisville, Kentucky, and you too can hold a piece of baseball history.
So this is that hold a piece of history exhibit. So this is where the fans can pick out their favorite and get their favorite bat in their hands. The selection of the players are right over here. About, Ricky Henderson and Pudge Rodriguez and Tony Gwynn, Babe Ruth, Johnny Bench, Clemente, to hold a Roberto Clemente game-used bat. How cool is that? Ken Griffey Jr. So this is a Babe Ruth bat that's really special to our collection. It's the bat that he used from the 1927 season. This was the Murderers Row year. The Yankees go on to sweep the Pirates in the World Series. One of the greatest baseball teams of all time, if not the greatest baseball team. And their star was Babe Ruth. This is the season he hit 60 home runs in it. And that season, he was putting a notch in his bat for every one of his home runs that he was hitting. And so if you were to count the notches on this bat, there's 21 notches on this bat. So over a third of his home runs that he hit in the best season of his career was with this piece of lumber here. When it finally breaks, he sends it back to our factory and asks our workers to make him more bats just like that one. And even back in 1927, our workers had enough sense not to throw that one in the scrap pile. It's been part of our collection ever since.
When he was 12 years old, P.J. Shelley's dad took him on a tour of a few baseball stadiums. They went to Cooperstown to the Baseball Hall of Fame, even saw the Field of Dreams movie. It was a 12-year-old kid's dream come true.
But like the game itself, it's not just that trip that cemented PJ's love of baseball. It's all the memories of a special time with a special person in his life. Memories that he still holds dear today.
And that, says PJ, is practically a definition for baseball. Memories of special times with someone you love.
What does it do for you? You said your dad was the one that influenced your love of baseball, but you see dads and kids come in, grandpas come in. What does it do for you to see the wonderment in the kids' eyes?
It brings so much joy to us. And one of the neat things is when the folks come take their factory tours here, at the end of their factory tour, everyone gets a little mini bat, a little mini Louisville Slugger. And so, I may go to have a bite to eat for lunch or something like that, and I'm walking down Main Street. And here is I see this family walking down Main Street, and they got these smiles ear to ear, and they're carrying their little mini bats, and the kids are swinging them, and they're all excited, and they're walking away, and they're just happy, and that's just it just to me it fires me up, and it just fills us with pride to see people have a great time here, and it's got my soul full, and like I said, I'm full of gratitude every day. So it's been awesome.
Isn't it great when we get to meet people who get to do something in their life that harnesses so much of their passion?
Yeah, and Kelly, that's exactly what we always told our kids. Follow your heart, do what makes you happy. P.J. Shelley is obviously doing just that.
Well, let's continue our conversation with PJ, including more about the origins of baseball itself, how Louisville Slugger went from making butter churns to baseball bats, a rare and exclusive peek into the vault where all the historical bats are kept, and lots more.
Many people think that the game kind of evolved from a game over in England called Rounders. There's an argument to be made that it was born here in the United States. It's probably some kind of combination of the two. We may not ever know the true origin story behind baseball. It certainly evolved throughout the 19th century and certainly spread throughout the United States during the Civil War. That really spread it across the entire country. And then baseball, certainly the latter half of the 19th century, we just got baseball mad, right? National League was formed, American Association was formed, and baseball really spread throughout the United States. And once, we started paying players play the game, it really went to the next level. And that's when the Louisville Slugger came on board in the 1880s.
Talk about that. Let's hear the history of how this started.
So in 1884, a 17-year-old kid named Bud Hillerick is working for his dad's woodworking shop about 10 blocks from where we're sitting right now. J.F. Hillerick had a wood turning shop here in Louisville. He had come over from Germany in the 1850s, set up his shop here in Louisville, and they made things like bedposts and all kinds of wood products. At the time, their signature product was a thing called the swinging butter churn. So swinging butter churn was, to the dad, that was the future of the company. Is we have to put all our resources into the swinging butter churn. This is the gold standard right here. This teenager, he plays hooky from work one day, and he catches his favorite team. Back in the 1880s, there was a professional team, a major league caliber team here called the Louisville Eclipse. It eventually folded, and their players became the Pittsburgh Pirates. But back in the 1880s, the Louisville Eclipse, the star player for that team was a guy named Pete Browning. Well, Browning breaks his bat to stay that Bud's at the game. So Bud approaches him after the game and says, "Hey, I'm a big baseball fan. I'm really good with wood. My dad's got this woodworking shop. Why don't you come back to my shop? I want to customize you a baseball bat." So Browning agreed, and he comes back to the shop. He customizes him a bat to Browning's exact specifications. Next day, Browning gets 3 hits with it. Well, word spreads. Pretty soon, his teammates are looking for one of those bats. Pretty soon, everyone in the major leagues is, and here we are, 141 years later, we're still hitting home runs in the World Series. Bud Hillerick, his great-grandson, is our president today, John Hillerick.
And all because this kid played hooky from work and had the nerve to go up and essentially ask for the order.
And then there was a struggle there between the father and son, because again, the father thought the future of the business was in butter churn. And the teenager was like, "Dad, I think we should lean into this baseball thing." And fortunately, the son won, and you guys aren't coming here to talk about butter churn factories. Pete Browning was the key. He was their star player, and he was our first guy. And then signed another player that came out of Louisville, a guy by the name of Hannes Wagner, in 1905 to a contract. And he was the first guy that we signed as a contracted player. So 1905 was the first real sports endorsement deal where we put Wagner on, we used his signature and said, "All right, we're going to pay you money now to swing our bats. You're going to be expected to use our bats exclusively. We'll put your signature on the bat. And then we can start using Hans Wagner's name in our advertising and put his name on a kid's bat and sell it to kids up in Pittsburgh and et cetera." And that's how we all got started. And this Wagner was the first, and now we have over 9,000 ball players have been under contract with us, including, like I mentioned, 80% of the hitters in the Hall of Fame.
Okay, you've got to rattle off some of the well-known names that people are going to know that have swung your bat.
How long have you got?
Right. I mean, we're talking Babe Ruth and Stan Musial and Jackie Robinson and Ty Cobb and Mickey Mantle and Hank Aaron, Ken Griffey Jr., Howard Quinn Jr., Tony Gwynn, Ronald Acuna Jr., Kyle Schwarber, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I mean, we can today's guys to yesterday's stars and a little bit everybody in between.
Ricky Henderson?
Henderson, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You're trying to stump him, right?
Oh, no, because I watched Nolan throw his 5,000th strikeout at Ricky Henderson.
Well, Nolan Ryan actually was under contract too. So we didn't have a lot of pitchers under contract with us, but we did have a few, and Ryan was one of them. We've created thousands of models over the history of our company, and you would think a bat is a bat, but there's literally countless shapes with that. And within those shapes, there's different types of wood, and there's different options you can do with it. So we're going to blow your mind here today.
Okay, both of our kids played baseball.
Yeah.
They had favorite bats.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you did too.
Yeah,
what was
did.
your favorite?
So I prefer a U1 model. It's the model that Roberto Clemente swung. Mm-hmm. It feels really right. It feels really good in my hands. There's a real, almost no knob to it at all, just a really slight flare to it. And it's just what feels right in my hands. And so today's players are swinging 3 types of wood. They're swinging maple, birch, and ash. Most of our production these days are maple. When I started here 16 years ago, it was predominantly ash. There's hardly anyone today still swinging ash.
Why is that?
It just fell out of favor. About 20 years ago, a guy by the name of Barry Bonds came along and launched 73 home runs with a maple bat. And so a lot of players came looking and moving away from the ash to that maple. So birch is kind of a hybrid between the two. It's going to offer some flex to it, but not as much as the ash would. So we'll start off with these cylinders. These are called billets, and they come from our forest up in Pennsylvania and upstate New York. We have our own mills up there, and we have our own forest up there as well. So we're completely integrated from the time it's in the forest to the time it's in the ball player's hand. There's no middleman in that process except for the UPS guy that takes it from our factory to the ballpark. But these billets, 37 inches long, just under 3 inches in diameter. This is what we're going to use to shape into our baseball bats. So these yellow ducks that you see above a lot of the machines here, it's part of a very elaborate vacuum system. Typical baseball bat, about 32 ounces, 31 ounces, about 2 pounds. Typical billet, about 5 pounds. So we make a lot of sawdust. All that sawdust gets sucked up into this vacuum system and taken to a container in the back of our building. Every few days, about twice a week or so, we have a turkey farmer. He's going to come by and pick up a semi-truckload, about 32,000 pounds of sawdust. He's going to haul it across the Ohio River to his farm up in Indiana, and they'll use that for bedding for the turkeys.
So everything is used.
Everything gets repurposed.
So when you're coming up and you're playing high school, select ball and all of that, they're using metal bats. We get into real baseball, as I call it, and all of a sudden we're back to the wood. What's the difference and why?
Well, the aluminum and metal and composite bats, they're just much more forgiving. When you talk about the sweet spot on the bat and how you have to make contact with the bat, so they're much more forgiving. They don't break as easily. So from a cost perspective, I mean, they cost more up front, but in the long run, they're supposed to save you money because you're not going to break a wood bat. At the end of the day, we all want to hear that crack of the bat, and that's baseball right there. There's a lot of high school guys. There's a lot of college leagues now, or tournaments that are going back to wood bat leagues or to wood bat tournaments. And then there's a lot of old guy leagues for us guys in our 40s and 50s. We don't have the reaction time like we used to. So there's a lot of these senior leagues now. We're switching back to wood bats too. So it's neat to see it kind of come full circle. So we also make aluminum bats that we don't make them on site here, but that's also one of our product lines as well. The wood bat it's never going to go away because it's never going to make it to the major leagues. They'll never swing the aluminum bat in the major leagues. They're always going to swing a wood little saw.
What is it about that sound? Because no matter who you are, where you're sitting in the stands, when the ball hits the bat and it makes that sound, you know it. The hitter knows it. Everybody in the stands knows it.
One of my passions here in my role, in this role now, is education. So we bring in students all year round. This year, I think we're going to do about 100 school groups we've done this year. So we'll bring in between 50 and 100 students from all over. One of our newest education module is called Sweet Spot Science, and it's all about the science behind the baseball bat and that sweet spot, how to find that sweet spot, what's the science behind it. There's different physics components behind it called center of percussion and vibrational nodes that designate where that sweet spot in that bat is. And it's where you don't get any of that sting in your hands, right? That's where all that energy, instead of going, that sting in your hand is energy that's not going into the baseball, it's going into your hands. So if you get it on that sweet spot in the right part of your Louisville Slugger, all the energy will be driven into the baseball, and it's going to make that nice crack sound that you hear in the stands, and then the ball is going to go far.
And 100+ mile-an-hour balls they're throwing now, that's a double-edged sword, right? Because you hit the ball going that fast with that bat.
Yes. And you got a big guy like Kyle Schwarber, the speed of his bat is going to create quite some force, and you get that ball just flies right off there. They call it exit velocity is the term they use these days.
And I guess you guys have probably done all kinds of analytics about the swing of that bat.
Sure, we sure have, yeah. And so one of the newest things that we've been doing this last few years that's really blown up this year are the torpedo bats. So it's a new shape of a bat. And I've got some samples that we can show you downstairs, but it's essentially shaped like a torpedo, and we've been actually experimenting with it for about 4 seasons now, but it really blew up this past spring. The Yankees, the first week of the series, they were playing the Brewers, and they hit a whole ton of home runs with these torpedo bats, and then our phone just blew up. Right? All the teams wanted these torpedo bats. And what we're doing is we're studying the players where they're most likely to make. Each player will get the analytics from MLB, and we'll discover where they're most likely to make contact, where they're most frequently making contact on their Louisville Slugger.
And you're getting minute.
And getting minute to this, yep. And then we'll customize the fattest part of the barrel to where they're most likely to make contact with that bat. Therefore, we're shifting the sweet spot on the bat to where they're most likely to make contact. And it's not going to help all players, but it's going to help those guys that have been missing the sweet spot on their traditional Louisville Slugger bat, and we'll move that sweet spot to where they are most likely to make contact.
Is it getting harder and harder or easier and easier to be a Major League Baseball player with all of the things that are being studied and all the things we know now that we didn't know 100 years ago?
Yeah, one of the great quotes, I had an opportunity to speak with Eddie Murray about hitting, And he was telling us how it's all about making adjustments. Hitting is all about making adjustments, right? And same with pitching, right? So hitters are going to make these adjustments. They're going to move the sweet spot on their bat. And pitchers pitcher's job is to get the ball off the sweet spot of the bat. So they're going to try to make their own adjustments to it and try to get the players to hit it off the end of the bat or the inside of the bat. Mariano Rivera made a living breaking our bats. He had this great cut fastball that, it would come into the batter looking like this nice juicy fastball right down the plate. And all of a sudden it would cut in on the player's hands, and then the player would swing and it would hit the inside part of the bat, and the barrel of the bat would fly off and break, and he'd break our bats. And it was okay. We still made more. He broke a lot of our bats over his career, and that's how he got into the Baseball Hall of Fame, because, those sting the player's hands, and it's a little easy trickle ball to the infield, and the player will be out.
And so when you're watching a game and you see one of your Louisville Slugger bats break,
It doesn't happen often.
what goes through your head at that moment? Is this like, oh no, or oh wow, cool?
Well, it depends. If the player was holding it, what I'm looking at is if he held it correctly, if he got it on that sweet spot, it's very unlikely that that bat will break. So it's usually when he's getting jammed, or if he's hitting out the end of the bat, or if he's not holding the bat correctly, or if it's one of our competitors' bats. So African Americans have been playing baseball as long as baseball has been played here in the United States. They were, of course, excluded throughout most of the 19th century. That didn't stop them from playing baseball. Of course, they would form their own teams. They would form their own leagues. These leagues would eventually be known as the Negro Leagues, historically known as the Negro Leagues. 1920, Negro Leagues really took off. The National Negro League was a direct competition to the major leagues. Right, so we had stars like Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige, and these really great superstars that didn't have an opportunity to play in the major league just because of the color of skin. And not just African Americans, we had Latin Americans too. And it wasn't until Jackie Robinson and Branch Rickey and the Brooklyn Dodgers really opened the doors in 1947 with Jackie Robinson opening up those color barriers. But the neat thing for our company, at least, is that we've been making bats for African American players as long as our records go back. We've been making those Negro League stars like Cristobal Torriante and Pete Hill, these great pre-Negro League stars. As far as our records go back, we've been making bats for players. And we signed Jackie Robinson to a bat contract in 1946. The year before, he breaks the color barrier in 1947. So I think that's pretty progressive for a team here in Louisville, Kentucky. And then, way back in the 1930s, there was this great superstar by the name of Martin Diego, who was born in Cuba. And he was a star of the Negro Leagues. He was also a star in Cuba. He's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. We signed him into a contract back in 1937, and when he was playing in Havana, Cuba. Just over in Asia, Japan, Korea, baseball is really popular there. Latin America, many of the Latin American countries, baseball and soccer are the two big sports. Mm-hmm. Basketball, hockey, not so much. Football, not so much. So baseball is a huge sport down there, and so it's something that they're really passionate about. So their dream is just like a lot of us, is to play in the major leagues. And now we have all the major league teams have scouts down there. They have their own camps down there. They have offices down there. So they're watching these players grow up and coaching them and meeting with them and grooming them in a sense to become the next generation of major league players.
And of course now we have the Asian influence also. Otani, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Is that changing the game? Adding to the game? What's your view?
Making it more global, of course. Yeah. So it's always been exciting to see more countries get involved. And as a baseball huge geek like myself, I love the World Baseball Classic. I think it's so much fun. Play it every 3 or 4 years or so, and to see all these countries kind of come together, and all these different major leaguers, who play on, say that the Cincinnati Reds, but now they're all playing for their individual countries. It's really neat to see them play with that passion against one another, and seeing Japan and Korea play against Puerto Rico and Venezuela. And to me, it's also neat too, as an older guy now, the guys that are the coaches and managers of these World Baseball Classics are the guys that I grew up watching playing. So it's really neat to see it kind of come full circle.
What can folks find here at Louisville Slugger? What can they see?
Why should someone come and visit your museum?
So, of course, the Baseball Hall of Fame is a great institution, right? They have an incredible collection. We don't have the collection that they have, but what we have is the Baseball Bat Factory. So we have a really great museum We have a great museum that welcomes people in. Our museum's very hands-on. One of the highlights of the museum is an exhibit called Hold a Piece of History. And in this exhibit, we have all 30 teams represented. So whether you're Toronto Blue Jays or Seattle Mariners or Diamondbacks or Rangers, wherever you come from, we've got a game-used bat that you can hold. So we have all 30 teams represented. And then we have some really great superstars, baseball superstars. Babe Ruth, Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Ken Griffey Jr., game-used bats that anyone can walk into our museum
And hold.
and get a picture with it.
I can hold a bat that was also used by Babe Ruth
Absolutely. Yeah.
and get a picture.
And your 5-year-old can do that too. Yeah. So
God, there is a God. Is this heaven?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then once you do all that and you check out, you have a notched bat from Babe Ruth, and we have a Hank Aaron, his 700 home run bat. Those bats are behind glass, so you can't touch those ones. But we have some really, some great historic bats in our collection. And so once you take all that stuff out, and then you take the factory tour, and you can see it's about a 35 minute factory tour where we show you how the bats are being made today. There'll be some history in there too, but it's really neat to see all the factory. And so many people in the United States have never really toured a manufacturing facility today. So it's really neat to kind of open up their eyes and show them the United States is still proudly making a lot of great products.
So how different is it today from what it was back when it first started? Do you know?
Sure, yeah. So back in the 1880s, when guys like Hillard were making bats for peat grinding, we would turn bats by hand. And turning bats by hand, it would take us about 30 minutes to turn a bat on a lathe by hand. We have computerized lathes now that are accurate down to 5/1000ths of an inch and can pump out about in about 48 seconds. So we went from 30 minutes to 48 seconds, and they're a lot more accurate. Our hand turners were really accurate. They were typically accurate down to about a 30 seconds of an inch. But these machines can now do it down to about the thickness of a sheet of paper. So it's really, really precise. So welcome to the Bat Vault. And I like to think of this as the Fort Knox of Louisville Slugger. What we're looking at over here, these are the master models that our craftsmen used to lay out in front of them to hand turn the bats with the major leaguers. For the major leaguers, up until the 1980s, we were still doing it by hand because players had so many different models. So when you're doing that, you always have to have that master model up lined up in front of you. You never want to make a copy from a copy, right?
Right.
So these are all the original masters over here. Like that. So our catalog system's pretty simple. You can see it's a letter followed by a number. Letter represents the ball player's last name. The number is a sequential order, or within that last name that create a model first. So for example, I'm here in the R's over here. I'll grab a R46 model. So this is a Pee Wee Reese model here. Pee Wee Reese, great captain of the Dodgers, helped Jackie Robinson get walked to the Dodgers. He was a 46 guy with last name letter R to create a model with this. So we started that system back in the 40s, and that's a system we're still used today. When you look at all these bats, what's wild is you think a bat is a bat, right? Every single bat in here, there's 3,000 bats in here. Each one is its own unique shape. There's no duplicates. Something's going to separate it from all the others. Different knob, different handle, different barrel. And it could be a fraction of an inch. And again, these weren't originally thought as historic museum pieces. They're just bats. And so they were treated as such. And so nowadays, when a new player creates a new model with us, we don't need a physical copy of that any longer. We can program that right into the CNC. So in Acuna or Schwarber, these guys, we don't need a physical copy.
You just say R16 and...
Right. But now we're up to R395 or so, Behind us over here, these are the Silver Slugger Awards. So each year, Louisville Slugger gives out the Silver Slugger Award. And it's voted on by all the coaches of the teams. And the way it's for the best offensive player for each position. And the coaches all vote for it, and you can't vote for guys on your own team. So you have to vote for somebody on your other team. And we started that back in 1980, and it's so these are the actual awards that the players will receive here. So you can see Shohei Ohtani and Kyle Riley and Jose Ramirez, Aaron Judge, all these greats today. Before they get their prestigious award, you can kind of check it out and see it here in our Bat Vault.
So do they have any idea that they're getting this award?
They already was made a couple weeks back. Then the awards are put on display here for a couple months, and then the spring of 26, the players themselves will get those. We forget to receive those. They usually do like a ceremony in April there at the beginning of the year.
Why do you think it is that it's so important? There are so many people out there that go, I've got to check every baseball stadium off of my list. Is it
Our oldest son, who's
he's got 2 remaining.
Yeah.
But that's important. Why? Is it just that love of America and baseball that comes together?
It's all of that. But when you go to a football stadium, if you go, I've been to a number of the NFL stadiums. I've been to, I don't have 2 left. I have maybe 7 or 8 left of the MLB parks. But I've been to maybe 7 or 8 NFL stadiums, and they're great. But they're all the stadium dimensions are all the same. And if if you go see a football game in Cincinnati, or if you go see one in Pittsburgh or Dallas, they're pretty much the same. I mean, each ballpark has its own unique characteristics. The outfield walls, the dimensions are all a little bit different. They have their own unique foods, their regional foods that they really lean into. So, that's part of the whole experience. You can create those memories that will stick with you. And that's just part of the magic of baseball, I think, is the overall experience of going to the ballparks.
Do you think back and think, my life has come full circle now that I'm working
You
here?
got the dream job.
I have such a dream job, and I'm so filled with gratitude. And that's something I try not to take for granted. And then how cool is it when Will Smith or, Joe Carter or Bill Mazeroski or all these, these.
Don't tell me they come here.
They all come here, of course, too. But for them to see, for them when they make history with our bats, walk off home runs in World Series and things like that, and to know, yeah, we made that, or oh, Kelly made that one. One of the guys that works on a CNC machine, his name is Kelly. So oh, Kelly made that. Oh, that's the one that Jake made over there. I not only do I know who made that, I know that it's one of our bats, but I know the person who helped make that bat.
It really is personal.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for us. I mean, we have this great name, right? Louisville Slugger. It's a name that everyone in the nation knows, right?
Oh yeah.
We just take a lot of pride in that, and we have to have gratitude in that. For so many years, first 110 years or so, the company was run like a business, like a company. Like, we would make baseball bats for guys like Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb and Lou Gehrig, and once they sold them a bat, and that was great. It was a business transaction, and then we go on to make bats for the next guy, Joe DiMaggio. Okay, great. Here we go. We're going to make a bat for Mel Ott and Joe DiMaggio next, And so that was just, but really it wasn't until the 90s where our company kind of looked back and said, we have such a really big part of America's pastime, right? So let's lean into that and celebrate that history, and that's what we did with our museum.
You have a story to tell, don't
We
you?
have a story to tell, yeah. And now we're bringing in over 250,000 guests, so it's a great attraction here in Louisville, and we hope that all the locals and all the folks that visit will come visit us.
One last question for you here.
Sure.
I want to know your thoughts on this. There are people out there who they don't get baseball, they don't get sports of any kind. They say, hey, it's a game. How important could this be? But for those of us who do, which I think is really most Americans, it's so much. What would you say about that? Why is it important to our history and our culture?
Yeah, I mean, baseball is America, right? Baseball is in so many ways. If you want to know the history of America, you gotta learn baseball. And one of the great things about our museum here is frequently we get families that come through, and there's maybe the kids will be excited to come, and there's maybe one parent, typically a dad, that's really excited to come. Sometimes not always, but sometimes a mom. But sometimes the mom may not be so excited to come, but she's kind of getting dragged along. But then she comes in, she checks out the museum. She may hold a Babe Ruth bat, or she may stare down a 90-mile-per-hour fastball, and then she takes the factory tour. And there's always something that everyone can connect with, even if you're not a baseball fan at all. Whether it's manufacturing, whether it's if you're into the wood, if you're into how we harvest the wood and our environmental aspects, there's something that we can connect with all that, with all of that. And so by the time they finish it, they're leaving with a big smile on their face too. So it's always neat to find that angle with everybody, and even if you're not a big baseball fan, you can still come here, have a great time, and be part of that history. It's something that my grandparents played, and my grandchildren will play, and I think it's always going to be America's pastime.
Well, that wraps up another incredible stop here in Kentucky. And walking through the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory, you don't just see the history of baseball, you feel it. I mean, from holding the bats of legends to watching those wood chips fly in the factory, it's an absolute home run for the whole family any time of the year. And we don't want you to miss a single mile of this journey, the USA 250 tour. So make sure you're following along with us on Facebook and Instagram for all the behind the scenes action. And if you want to see exactly what we're seeing, well, just head over to our YouTube page. Check out the videos from the road. New episodes drop every week. We're traveling coast to coast for the big 250th anniversary of America. You can catch every episode by simply downloading the free Odyssey app. Search for On the Road with Kelly and Bob. Take us on your next adventure. We'll see you next time.